Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. One of the most frequent questions I get asked on a regular basis is how do you determine which wing dams are a good wing dam versus which wing dam is not a good wing dam? And if you're a river fisherman, wing dams can be very, very overwhelming because in a lot of instances, you have miles upon miles upon miles of river that have a wing dam every 100 yards in some instances. And they can become very, very overwhelming. Now, having said that, if you know how to find the right wing dams, you can really limit the amount of time you spend fishing non-productive wing dams. And the reality is, when you find a good wing dam, a lot of times you can sit there for a long period of time and catch fish after fish after fish. And depending on the river that you're fishing, you have the opportunity in a lot of instances to catch all three species of bass or multi-species, whether you got some walleye mixed in or whitebacks mixed in. Your wing dams are a great location to fish in your rivers. And, a lot of times this is going to be more based on, your northern fishing, but at the same time, this also holds true down south. And there's a lot of rivers I fish down south where all of this comes into play. So let's kind of just talk about your wing dams overall. If you're not familiar with a wing dam, it's generally a long rock jetty that is placed there by man. Generally, it's the Army Corps of Engineers to direct water flow back into the main channel. It's a good way to create or prevent erosion from occurring, and it's a good way to make sure that your shipping channels are deep enough for your the traffic that's going up and down the river. And when they put that rock in, what that does is it creates great fish holding habitat. And the reason for that generally is because any place you have a wing dam, you have current hitting that wing dam, and the wing dam diverts the current. Well, when it diverts the current, it actually speeds that current up. So you have a good opportunity for fish to sit by that wing dam, wait for food to come to it, and it just creates a great feeding location. At the same time, a lot of times you also have deeper water directly behind the wing dam. So you've got a lot of different things going on. You might have a little shallower water in front of the wing dam. Then you've got the wing dam, which is rock itself, where you have an increase in current. And then behind the wing dam, you've got a hole where the fish can get out of the current. So that really is very attractive to most fish species, whether that's bait fish or whether that's game fish or rough fish. You generally have a lot of stuff going on around the wing dams. The problem is, like I said, there could be hundreds upon hundreds of wing dam in the areas that you're fishing. And in some cases, the wing dams might be several hundred yards long. So in order to fish those, it takes quite a bit of time. So I wanted to kind of help you break down which wing dams are most productive. And a lot of that has to do with specific location. So let's just kind of give you my five main things that I look for. The first of which is the depth of the top of the wing dam. Generally speaking, on rivers, the majority of the game fish, and I'm primarily talking about bass species, prefer to live shallower. Generally, you're talking about most of those fish living in 10 foot of water or less. And generally speaking, if I'm fishing wing dams, I prefer to be fishing wing dams that top out in 6 foot of water or less. I generally am not a huge fan of a wing dam that breaks the surface. So a lot of times in low water periods, the top of the wing dam will actually stick out. I like to have water flowing over the top of them. So from that standpoint, I generally prefer to have 6 foot of water or less as long as there's water coming over the top. Anything deeper than that, and I find that they're just a little bit harder to fish. And generally speaking, you got to recognize that the bass are using this as a feeding location. They like to use that wing dam to condense the amount of water depth that the bait fish can use. So the bass will actually chase the bait fish up into those wing dams, and as they push the bait fish to the wing dam, the amount of water depth condenses, making it easier for them to ambush the prey. So I like personally to have about 6 foot of water or less. I find that those are generally the most productive. So that's something you want to pay attention to. They are also generally easier to fish, and there's more types of baits that you can fish around the shallower wing dams. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't find a wing dam occasionally that's got 10 foot of water on top of it that can be productive. But I do think generally those are harder to break down and harder to find than a lot of your shallower ones. So I prefer to start with ones that are 6 foot of water or less. So once I've found some wing dams that are meet that depth criteria, I like to look for ones that are in very specific locations. One of them being at the mouth of a cut, whether that's a creek, a secondary channel, it could be a backwater cut, it could be a running slough. I like to have something that those fish have right in that general area that will take them back into a spawning location, a summer location, a fall location. Generally speaking, it's more of a travel route. If you just have a wing dam on the main river channel in a series of 10 wing dams, there's not that much there to separate those wing dams from each other. But if you have a wing dam that's right at the mouth of a slough or a backwater cut or a secondary channel, you've got travel routes and it's an intersection point. Generally speaking, those are going to be really good places. Now, if you're talking about a place like the Mississippi River, a lot of times your backwaters, you'll have largemouth that spawn in the spring and then they pull out in warmer water to the first wing dam that's right out of that spawning location. So they pull out, find the wing dam, and that's the wing dam they utilize. They don't necessarily swim up and down the river looking for other wing dams. So I like to find a wing dam at the mouth of some form of intersection into another source of that part of the river or creek. Another thing that I definitely like to look for is a first wing dam in a series of wing dams as you're heading down river. So in a lot of instances when you're fishing rivers, you'll have a set of wing dams where you might have 5 wing dams in a row that are diverting water to the main channel, and that generally means that as it diverts, as that water goes over the wing dams, you lose current from the upstream wing dam to the downstream wing dam. Well, generally speaking, bass like faster current, especially smallmouth. So I'll usually start on that upstream wing dam in a set of wing dams because that one will have usually the fastest current, which gives the fish the best opportunity to feed. Now, if I catch them on that wing dam, I'll probably fish the next set of wing dams down. If I don't catch one on the first one, I'm usually not fishing any more in that set of wing dams because the first one, the most upstream wing dam, is generally going to be your best wing dam. So that's something to look for as well. Uh, Another thing is your island heads specifically. A lot of islands have wing dams placed in front of them to divert water away from the front of that island to keep the island from eroding away. Well, when you have current coming down the main channel heading into an island, that's some of your fastest current in the river. If you put a wing dam there, now you have, good current hitting a good, um, really, it's a diversion wing dam that's in front of that island, but that generally creates a good spot to fish. Not only because you get the wing dam, but a lot of times behind the wing dam, what you end up having is a shallower feeding flat. A lot of times it's just a sand flat. A lot of times there'll be a nice channel through that sand, so you might have a washout area, but it just is a good. There's a lot going on your island heads if there's a wing dam on the front of it, and that's one of my favorite places to look as well. All of this kind of really relates back to the current. So generally speaking, I want to find wing dams that have faster current on them. So with respect to your island head, that's got fast current. The first wing dam in the set of a wing dam, so the most upstream wing dam is one of the best ones. A lot of times when you're talking about where you have a secondary channel or you got uh, a cut that leads into a backwater, you've got a lot of diverted water flow that's running through those areas. And because of that, those are really good. So I would generally recommend that even if you don't find a wing dam that fits any of those scenarios, to find the wing dams that have the fastest current on them. And that doesn't mean it's got to be raging. It could just simply be if you're in a stretch of river that's a little deeper, a little slower moving, and you find one wing dam that's got faster moving water on it, that's going to be one you want to look for. Really, all of the locations I've given and the ones that are shallower generally have faster moving water, and that faster moving water is one of the most important things to creating a good wing dam. Once you've identified those wing dams, they're generally pretty easy to fish. You know, you throw some moving baits, some top waters, some jerk baits, some crank baits. You can drag Carolina rig, a drop shot, a Ned rig. It usually doesn't take that many casts to determine if there's a good population of fish that are using that isolated wing dam or that specific wing dam. Um, it's really just really not that hard. Generally takes, 10, 15 casts. If you don't get bit, there's probably not a big group of fish. If you do get bit, a lot of times you'll find a group of fish on them, especially here in the fall period. This is one of the best times to be fishing wing dams. So if you live on a river that's in your area that has wing dams, use these tips to put you in front of more fish and help you break down those wing dams because they can definitely be overwhelming. There can be a ton of them on the water, and it's hard to fish every wing dam on the river. It'll take you a ton of time. So if you can look at a map and figure out which ones are going to fit this profile faster, you're going to catch more fish and you're going to break your river down a lot faster. Hopefully, this answers all of the questions I've been getting recently about fishing wing dams and helps you guys catch a few more fish. So, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate all the support. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.